podcast. This is the Interview Series, and today, sitting down with Shannon Tipton. Thank you for taking your time to let me interview you and talk about the work here a little bit. For those who may not know you, though, go ahead and take a moment and introduce yourself.
My name is Shannon Tipton. I'm a minister at the Pea Ridge Church of Christ here in Pea Ridge, Arkansas. I'm married to a wonderful, amazing woman, Christy. We were high school sweethearts. We have 3 children, Haley, Reagan, and Layton. Haley and Reagan are both married. Haley's married to Matthew Height. They work in Houston at the church in Jersey Village. He's a youth minister there. And Reagan is married to Ethan. Both men are wonderful Christian men. Couldn't ask for something better. And my son Layton, 16, he's getting ready to get his license. And so we've been together, married 26 years, somewhere in there. I'm sure she'll correct me later.
That's one of those you want to get right.
Yes, I know. She's not hollering at me right now and telling me.
Well, thank you for sitting down with us.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the invitation to be here. And we're in Northwest Arkansas, and so not too far from the Missouri line. And so this is certainly an interesting area. It's a growing area, and so I was just kind of excited to see it. There's a lot of trails around for the adventurous type.
Yes.
And we are so. And I didn't even bring my bike because I didn't know. And so we were driving through Bentonville, and my son goes, "Hey, that's mountain bike, capital, man. That's where you need to be." I said, "Well, I don't have my bike." So anyway, not that we have time, but anyway, so we're here this week and been working with the congregation a little bit, and just kind of talking about the work a little bit. So we were talking last night a little bit about kind of history as far as you leading up to going to school and everything. So whatever you want to share maybe of that as far as, kind of your decision-making process to train to be a preacher, because I know you didn't start out as a preacher. You were serving as a deacon actually in this congregation.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I was baptized probably when I was about 22. Run into the church really from the example of my grandfather-in-law. He was a great example of repentance and what you would see in that. I'd studied, understood what I needed to do, but I really didn't fully see it until I saw it in him. And so he was one of the reasons. And obviously my wife, she was definitely poured herself into the church, and she wanted me to be a part of that. What brought me into ministry really was probably Tim Wilkes and the Fishers of Men series. We had asked them to come, and they were actually working at Garfield Church of Christ, and they asked us if we wanted to come do the lessons. So we studied that, and just outpouring of God's Word into my heart, and changed a lot of my thinking on what I wanted to do. And then he asked us to do some mission work with them in the Philippines, and we went out and got support, and we went with them, and I realized I am not qualified to do enough. So that kind of drove me to seek more knowledge in God's Word. And we had been connected. Tim wanted me to go to Memphis, and we had considered that very much. And then we got connected to a local family here who his father had preached here. Wes Autry had contacted me and said, "Hey, we've got a school up here in Denver, and you want to come visit?" And they hooked us pretty quick because we visited, and the story is my daughter met her husband there, and so we got really connected with them. And the preaching school there is amazing, as most of them are, and so that really drove us into ministry. My first work was a great work. I loved it. We was in Shoto, Oklahoma, and there was a lot of things that I had to deal with I didn't deal with quick enough, and that's kind of a side story on its own. I don't want to take too much time, but it was a demon I hadn't really slain in myself. So that work kind of fell through, and my plan was never to come back and preach in my home congregation, and most ministers probably understand why. But you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, and he'll straighten that out for you. So we got back here, dealt with some health issues, dealt with some family things, and then I would say 2 or 3 years later, I started preaching here. and they'd asked me to be the minister here. So I've been here 4 years, and I love it. It's home, but it's not without its struggles.
No doubt. And I know, preaching to the home team, so to speak, the home families,
and a lot of family.
Yeah, and a lot of family. That's that can be that's a separate challenge. That sometimes in congregations that are away from, we don't have to worry about that as much. But that's just one little nuance there. That's just a little extra thing sometimes, but but mostly we probably pressure ourselves more so than they do. I mean, they want to see us succeed, and those kind of things. So I know that's always a part of that in the back of our mind in thinking about the work. And we think about ministry and local work, especially. So you've been here now 4 years, as the minister. And gone through a good bit of the history of this congregation, serving previously as a deacon. The congregation, was at least somewhat thriving at that point in time, and so went through some struggles, after the loss of a preacher and loss of an eldership and things that have naturally happened through the years. Now, hopefully on the rise back and the building back and things like that. And I know you have a very evangelistic heart, and we've talked about that. And I love that about you, and I appreciate that. And that's why I think we work well together. Our minds work well together. And you're thinking about the work that we, hopefully get to do in the future too from here. So just let's talk about the work here and what the work looks like, on a weekly basis. What's I know that there are always struggles in every congregation. There's always some high notes, though. I think it would be good to say, okay, if somebody was looking for a congregation in Pea Ridge, Arkansas, or a little bit of the surrounding area, what would you want for them to know that might draw them in?
Well, we're a congregation, kind of not large. So I think there's a place where if you came here and you wanted to serve God, there's plenty of opportunity, and there are people who will encourage you to do so. And the people here are so friendly. We've had people visit and say, "You guys you're a friendly congregation." So I think that's definitely part of it. And this is a growing community. This area is booming. We're 15 miles from Walmart's home office. We have three of the largest companies, J.B. Hunt and Tyson. So, work is available, but just in a community like this where there is so much growth, we find opportunity to share the gospel and help people to find their place and work in service of God. So there's great opportunities here, and we would want anyone who would want to be a part of it to join us in that. And I think the community itself is very, very friendly. It's small, getting large, and I think that's kind of interesting in some respects. The traffic is kind of crazy at times. We're working on that, but we try to stay connected with the city council. They ask us to come and pray with them, and I thought that was amazing. They offered that this year, and so pray for the council and what they're doing and helping the growth of the community. So that gives another opportunity to reach in and be a part of it, even though we really don't live in the area. So that's really pretty cool. And there's a place for that too. Yeah, and like you say, it is busy in the sense of there's a lot of folks that are moving in. There's houses going up everywhere as you're driving. We've been staying about 20 minutes from here, and so we're driving through a lot of that construction coming this way. But you're very close to Bentonville, Rogers in that area too, and then Bella Vista out, closer to the interstate on that side. So what's interesting to me about the area is because it is growing, that means there's jobs, that means there's an area for people, like you mentioned, to come in and find a place to work, certainly, and then you'd have a home congregation, that you could come and work too and grow with. And I think that's, in our discussions, that's what I've picked up on is the want and the desire to have families who would help grow in the congregation too. And so, but looking at those opportunities that are out there, because there are obviously then a bunch of non-Christians moving into the community,
we've got to find a way to connect to them too. And so I would say that may be, that's always a struggle for a congregation, you know, finding out the best way to connect, especially when it's happening fast.
It is.
Right here.
Very
you know.
quickly.
So you kind of got to get in there and use as many resources to be able to do that. As far as the congregation and you thinking about the history of the congregation, do you see, you know, and I know we set goals for ourselves sometimes. As preachers, we're a little bit harder on ourselves, and we probably, again, we were talking about expectations, and mine are way up here, you know, and stuff like that. Maybe the congregations are still right here. But as far as, you know, goals, you know, what would you like to see in the congregation maybe over the next five years?
Well, I would like to see,
years?
you know, we lost our eldership right after COVID, and our minister passed. So obviously building a leadership, I mean, that's got to be the goal. It's hard for a minister to not have that leadership, and to find men who are willing to do that would be my ultimate goal, is to train men up to lead, to do what God, you know, wants the church to look like. And so that's probably my first and foremost. Like I said, that's my highest goal, is to prepare leadership. I think second into that would be growing that leadership throughout, that generational, you know, preparing younger men. And I try to do that I took over the teen class with some of the young boys, and I try to get them to be a part of that leadership. And I think they catch on to that pretty quick. And, you know, I think what I've had to do over the last couple of years is just to prepare the growth inside before we go looking outward. And that's kind of a struggle sometimes, because, you know, there are, especially with families connected and things of that nature. So I want them to grow spiritually first. That way they are prepared, you know, to take on that leadership role in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think when you think about generational growth and things like that, you know, preparing for leadership, that's how we make sure that we don't have those big gaps of a lack of leadership in congregations. And so I think you're right on that being, you know, kind of a top priority for a congregation, for any congregation should be, you know, making sure that we're training up the next generation and having them ready to be able to serve and to see service as, you know, being faithful to God, you know, just in your studies and all those things, but also in getting up front and doing those things as young men, as they have opportunity, you know, but also young ladies learning to look for a young man who's of that caliber as well, you know, because that's going to be the next, you know, elder and elder's wife, deacon wife, you know, so in that sense. So when you think about ministry and the work of ministry itself, what do you see is maybe one of the most difficult things in ministry?
I think part of it is not taking it personally. A lot of times as preachers, we take a lot of things personal. And you know, especially if we're preaching, you know, something hard and something that, you know, people, you know, in the church there's division on in some things. But even in respect to just obedience and service, you know, wanting to serve God. And so I think, and in my perspective, I work a secular job too, you know, so I have to work outside of the church, and having that time where I could, you know, get men together and study and do the things that would prepare that leadership, I find that hard to do because I'm working just like they are. But in the same respect, it gives me a lot of opportunity to reach into my work and talk to people about God. So there's always a plus and a minus in that. I've had many studies with people I work with, and I love it. I mean, that's my nature. But you know, like I said, it doesn't give me the freedom that I always wanted in ministry, is being able just to be here and work with people when they need you. Back to the question. I forgot what we were talking about now. I would say the plus side of that, like I said, is it doesn't put a lot of pressure on the church to have to be able to afford insurance and things of that nature. But helping helping the people in the church to find their place is probably something that I struggle with, because sometimes, like I said, I take it personal, and I take more on than I probably should, because I'm the only real leadership they have outside of the men and trying to get them to lead. So
that working an extra secular job alongside that, so being bivocational in that way, though, does give, for guys that have had to do that through the years, it does give us a perspective on our membership, because they're all working jobs, and they're all dealing with their families, and then trying to get to the services and trying to do all the things, and so it does give us that perspective as well to maybe be a little bit easier on them, maybe and being able to be sympathetic, to that kind of situation, knowing, okay, well, they don't have as much time. If I'm full time doing this work, then this is all I'm doing. This is all I'm focused on, and then sometimes I take that to them, and my expectations again are on much higher.
Absolutely,
and so that can be a little bit difficult. So at least there's in doing that, it does give you that perspective. At the same time, there's the other side of that coin is as well, as you don't always have enough time to do to do some of the other things that I know that you want to do as a minister, and so there's that balance that you got to meet with that, and so that's important. So one more question. So as 416 Ministries, we always try to ask, because ministry is always up and down, and so. Especially during those more difficult times when we can't get discouraged, and what keeps you going?
My wife has a lot of it. I mean, she's always encouraging me, and it seems as though when she needs encouragement, that gives me opportunity. But I think it is the fact that I want the Lord's church to remain here in this town. I don't want it to go away, and I know that's God's plan. That's what He wants. He doesn't want, it's not like there isn't a church around here, but the body that meets here has been here a long time, and so that drives me, because I don't want to be that guy, the guy that closes the door.
Sure. I
don't want to be that dude. Yeah. No way. And so that motivates me, and also Scripture and prayer. I mean, I pray, and sometimes I find myself praying, and I lose track of what all I want to talk to God about. But prayer is probably one of those things that I lean on heavily, and I ask people to pray with me. And it is, and my son. I think my son, given him, that example. I've talked to him about preaching and things, and he's like, I don't know, Dad. I mean, he could do it, and he does it, but I don't want him to feel like he would never want to do that.
Right.
So I think just, my family, and like I said, we have a lot of family here, and they're, I want to see them all. I want to see the whole church, make it to heaven,
Right.
and so that drives me. I think there is always, going to be discouragement for preachers, but
sure.
I think I've learned not to take it personal anymore. So,
well, one thing that certainly has helped me, and even this week, is just being able to be together with one another, and that's a huge that's a benefit.
You're doing great work.
Always will.
It is.
I appreciate that, but for me, it's always one of those things where we come in and we want to encourage and help, but we end up being the ones that leave encouraged.
That's great.
Like, well, I hope
just keeps you doing it.
I hope we help them in some way. But we're really pumped and excited for the work that is being done, and that's something that I think that we see in so many different places. Yes, there are struggles in every congregation, but there's brethren that love the Lord, and brethren that want to continue to do work, and man, that's what keeps us going. That's for sure. So,
and I think some of the ways that keep us going is finding different ways to reach into the community. We started something a couple of years ago called a community garden, and I thought that this is a thought that we'd put together, and just trying to figure out a way to reach the community, and it's grown. I think it's going to be bigger this year than it's ever been. But what it is we have a large piece of property out here where it's just vacant. I mean, it's just dirt. So we had determined to build that into a community garden where the community can come in, and they can plant what they want, and we can be there with them, and we can meet with them. So I have a lot of expectations about that. I hope that the church can get behind that, and we've established some things where hopefully that will be just one of those things. But you guys coming is another branch that we can utilize, and we're excited about that too. So you guys are doing great work, and I hope you keep doing it.
Well, we're going to try to do our part. So,
yeah.
Well, thank you for sitting down, Shannon.
Absolutely,
And,
thank you.
Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you further down the road.